In the near future, the US government releases a chemical attack across the entire country as a way to reset society. This catastrophic event kills millions of people within minutes. In the aftermath, the government takes no action to restore order, leaving survivors with two choices: join one of the gangs fighting for territorial control, or live as a domestic, someone who just wants to survive in peace. A few months after the attack, a domestic couple, Mark and Nina, are packing their car for a trip to Milwaukee to search for Nina's parents. Mark's friend warns him about the dangers on the road, but Mark insists on going to support Nina despite the fact they had been considering divorce before the attack. As they drive, they listen to a radio broadcast warning domestics to avoid freeways, watch out for snipers, and shoot anyone dressed like a ghost, members of a gang called the Sheets. Later, the car begins to malfunction, forcing them to stop at an abandoned garage. While Mark works on the car, three men enter the shop. Unseen by the intruders, Mark cautiously attempts to return to his vehicle. Suddenly, a truck crashes into the garage and members of the Sheets gang open fire, killing the three men. The commotion alerts the gang to Mark, but after a few tense moments he manages to start the car and drive away just in time. On the radio, they hear that the Sheets are in a violent turf war with another gang called the Nailers. As evening approaches, Mark and Nina decide to spend the night in an abandoned house. While Nina searches for supplies, Mark checks each room, eventually finding a dead couple in the bedroom. The bloodstained scene reveals they were attacked and mutilated. As an act of mercy, Mark covers their bodies. Nina then tries to contact her mother using an old radio, but gets no response. That night, Mark updates his map before lying down to sleep next to Nina, unaware that a man outside is watching them. The next morning, the man and his companion are ambushed by a group of Nailers who brutally beat them and threaten to kill them with a chainsaw unless they reveal Nina's location. Terrified, the man betrays Nina's whereabouts, but the Nailers kill both men anyway. Soon after, the couple hears the Nailers approaching on their bikes. Nina hides in the attic and puts on headphones to block out the sounds of the impending violence. As the gang searches the house, Mark sneaks through the rooms with a screwdriver. He stealthily kills one intruder by stabbing him in the head, then engages in a brutal fight with Nailer Dean. After a desperate struggle, Mark fatally stabs Dean in the stomach and the eye. The couple flees the house in their car, unaware that someone is still watching them. During their journey, they hear a radio broadcast about a woman from the Cherry Gang who has been saving women and killing anyone who stands in her way. When the couple stops at a supermarket for supplies, they encounter an armed man. Their fear quickly dissipates when the man, Nathan, removes his mask and introduces himself. He explains he had been watching them to ensure they were not hostile. Their conversation is interrupted by the sound of an approaching car, forcing them to hide behind the shelves. Nailers enter the store searching for Nina, but are swiftly gunned down by Nathan's son Steven, who had been hiding behind a counter. After the confrontation, Nathan invites Mark and Nina to join his family for dinner. The trio leaves in Nathan's tow truck, which drags Mark's car behind it. As they exit the parking lot, they are stopped by a gang known as the Plowboys. Their leader, Jim, claims they are patrolling the area after hearing reports of the Gamblers gang nearby. A woman named Betsy, identified as the Cherry mentioned on the radio, is trapped in the Gamblers truck. Jim, however, begins showing an unsettling interest in Nina. Steven prepares to shoot, but Nathan manages to de-escalate the situation due to his good relationship with Jim. The group is allowed to pass, but none of them notice that Dean, alive and injured, is watching them from the shadows. Later, Mark and Nina have dinner with Nathan, his wife, and their two children. The tension between Mark and Nina is palpable as they discuss their lives, contrasting sharply with Nathan and his wife's affectionate relationship. After dinner, Nathan casually reveals that the hamburgers they've just eaten were made from human flesh. Horrified, Mark begs Nathan not to tell Nina the truth and announces their intent to leave. Nathan, however, makes it clear they cannot leave by threatening them with deadly force. Suddenly, Dean bursts into the house holding Nathan's daughter as a human shield. He demands Mark and Nina in exchange for the girl, and without hesitation, Nathan agrees to the trade. As Dean pushes the girl forward, Steven sneaks around and slashes Dean's ankles, causing him to collapse and fire his gun. The stray bullet hits Nathan's wife, killing her as Mark grabs Nina and drags her out of the house. Meanwhile, Steven leaps onto Dean, stabbing him repeatedly as Dean desperately reaches for his weapon. Outside, Mark and Nina hear several gunshots before escaping in Nathan's car. Back on the road, Nina tells Mark she doesn't want to travel with him anymore. This sparks a heated argument about their deteriorating relationship and the chaos around them. Meanwhile, members of the Gamblers gang spot their car and spin a wheel, which lands on a skull, an order for their sniper to fire. The shot hits Nina in the shoulder, and Mark immediately turns the car around to head back to town for help. Elsewhere, Nathan contacts Jim to tell him he can have the couple. Excited, Jim sets out to gather his men, only to find them all dead. Betsy, having followed him, knocks Jim out with a pipe and frees the women the gang had captured. Taking guns from a nearby table, Betsy leaves in a stolen police car. Annoyed by Jim's groaning from the trunk, she stops and shoots him in the leg. At that moment, she notices movement in the nearby forest and ventures off to investigate, leaving the car keys in the trunk lock. The next morning, Nina wakes up in a cabin with her shoulder bandaged. Mark is nowhere to be found, but he's left a note explaining he went out to find food. When Nina tries to leave, she finds another note warning her the front door is booby-trapped. She climbs out a window instead and discovers a car in the garage. Rushing back inside to pack her belongings, she finds another note instructing her to play a specific record with her favorite song. On the final note, Mark apologizes for his mistakes and pleads with her not to give up on their marriage. Feeling conflicted and guilty, Nina stays in the cabin, drinking heavily and dancing to the music. Betsy, who has been watching, leaves without confronting her and finally kills Jim. Meanwhile, Mark enters an abandoned house and discovers two prisoners with bags over their heads. When he removes the bags, he's horrified to see Nathan and Stephen. Before he can react, a deranged man named William appears holding a gun and orders Mark to drop his weapon. William, who revels in ultraviolence, introduces his enforcer, a massive man named Bill the Big. He forces Mark and Bill into a fight to the death, threatening to kill Nathan and Stephen if Mark refuses. The fight begins with Mark landing a kick to Bill's groin, but Bill quickly overpowers him, delivering devastating blows. Bill throws Mark across the room, kicks him in the stomach, and lifts him by the neck to choke him. As William gleefully watches, Mark headbutts Bill, temporarily freeing himself, only to be grabbed and thrown into a piece of furniture. When Bill tries to snap Mark's neck, Mark bites his arm, prompting Bill to hurl him at William. In the chaos, Mark and William wrestle for the gun, which accidentally discharges, killing William. Afterward, Mark frees Nathan, Stephen, and even Bill, and they each go their separate ways. When Mark returns to the cabin, he finds Nina asleep on the couch and carries her to bed. Later, she wakes up to see Mark practicing his shooting. She asks him to teach her how to handle a gun, and during the lesson, Betsy sneaks into the cabin and discovers Nina's wedding ring. After their practice, Nina shows Mark the car she found in the garage. Nostalgic, Mark fondly recalls owning the same model, and their shared memories lead to a passionate moment in the backseat. Their intimacy is interrupted when the gamblers' gang arrives, claiming the car is theirs. The couple is quickly captured, and the gamblers spin their wheel to decide their fate. The wheel lands on a spade, sentencing them to be locked in cages and transported to the gang's headquarters at a rundown motel. The building is in chaos, with gang members drinking and brawling in every corner. At the front desk, the receptionist notices the couple is married and sends them to the Snake Eyes suite. Their host begins taking bets while the couple is tied to chairs. One hand is secured while the other is drilled painfully into guns bolted to the table. Each gun contains a single bullet, and the couple is forced to play Russian roulette. The host warns that if they refuse to pull the trigger when ordered, 2 additional bullets will be added to their guns. If they survive 6 rounds, they'll be allowed to leave. Mark urges Nina to shoot without hesitation, but Nina negotiates with the host. She offers to add 3 more bullets to Mark's gun in exchange for reducing their trial to only 2 rounds. The host agrees to Nina's terms, and after loading the bullets, the game begins. The gamblers count down, and both Mark and Nina fire their guns, but neither shot causes harm. However, in the second round, Nina's gun discharges its lone bullet, striking Mark in the shoulder. Chaos ensues when Wanda begins fighting another gambler over the bet money, distracting the host as he tries to calm them down. Taking advantage of the commotion, Nina pulls at her bindings until she frees her hand, then steals the host's gun from his boot. She shoots him twice, silencing him before firing at the table to release Mark's restraints. As Nina helps Mark to his feet, she uses the gun to keep the gamblers at bay. When the host tries to plead for help, she shoots him again, this time killing him. Wanda, furious but unarmed, orders the others to let the couple leave for now. As soon as Nina and Mark exit, Wanda and the gamblers scramble to retrieve their weapons. The duo searches for a working car while snipers on the roof spot them. Before the snipers can fire, Betsy appears and takes them out. The couple drives away in a stolen car as the gamblers open fire, their shots missing the mark. Frustrated, Wanda punches one of her crew members and vows to hunt down Nina. A few hours later, Mark wakes up in Nina's childhood home in Milwaukee. The neighbors inform Nina that her father died of an illness and her mother, overcome by grief, ended her own life. They know this from the letter she left behind. Nina reads the letter, then asks the neighbors how they maintain peace in the area despite the dangers. They explain their defensive setup: car barricades, rooftop snipers, and traps, including a mailbox rigged with explosives connected to barbed wire. While inspecting the neighborhood's defenses, Nina runs into Phil, an old family friend. Meanwhile, Betsy arrives in town and hides in the house across from Nina's, keeping a lookout for potential threats. Later, Nina notices Phil speaking into a walkie-talkie. When she tries to approach him, he runs back into his house. Suspicious, Nina sneaks around and discovers that Phil has been communicating with the gamblers who are on their way. At the same time, she notices a little girl playing on the street. Acting quickly, Nina pulls the girl into her house just as the gamblers arrive. Nina gives Mark a gun and tells him to protect the child while she handles the situation. The gamblers exit their cars and begin searching the area until Nina opens fire, killing several of them. The remaining gang members take cover and return fire, forcing Nina to retreat. Betsy seizes the opportunity to attack, mowing down a group of gamblers with her machine gun. With the gang's attention divided, Nina reloads, but a gambler sneaks up behind her. Before he can act, Mark shoots him through a window. Wanda refuses to back down and orders the fight to continue. One of the neighbors on guard duty starts shooting from the roof, providing additional cover. Betsy runs out of ammunition and is forced to hide while Nina throws a homemade smoke grenade into the street. Inside the house, a gambler ambushes Mark and begins choking him. Mark breaks off the horn from the gambler's mask and stabs him in the eye before tackling him to the ground and delivering a fatal blow to the heart. Outside, Nina continues her assault as Betsy discovers she's been shot. At that moment, the Plowboys arrive seeking revenge on Betsy for killing Jim. They engage in a gunfight with the gamblers while the truck plows through the car barricade. Nina activates the barbed wire trap, triggering a massive explosion that destroys the truck. The rooftop guard climbs down and kills the last standing gambler, only to be shot and killed by Wanda moments later. Inside the house, Betsy approaches Mark and returns Nina's wedding ring to him. As they talk, Wanda bursts in and shoots Betsy in the head. Before Wanda can turn her gun on Mark, Nina appears and shoots her down. With the fight over, Nina goes to Phil's house to confront him, only to find him already dead. She notices a gang tattoo on his body and sees her father's favorite gun on the table. Taking it as a keepsake, she leaves the house. Outside, she sees the little girl staring eerily at Phil's home, raising questions in Nina's mind about whether the child was involved, as there have been rumors of a gang led by children. Afterward, Nina gives Mark her father's gun and he places the wedding ring back on her finger. Once they've healed from their injuries, the couple sets out on the road again, vowing to hunt down gang members and protect innocent survivors. A radio host warns listeners not to cross paths with them.